This is Thank You Mama weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hi and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Ana Tajder and today we have a special episode because today I do not have a guest. Today I will be on my own. I will be your guest. I'm doing this special episode because it's my mama's birthday on June 19th, and I wanted to celebrate her birthday with you by sharing the most important lessons I learned from her with you. Since I launched this beautiful project, many listeners asked, where are you in this? And where is your mama? Where are your mama's lessons? So they're coming today. My amazing mama is the reason I started this project. A few weeks after I lost her to cancer 4 years ago, very surprisingly, I suddenly got struck by panic that I was going to forget everything she told me and she taught me. And I started writing it all down in a frenzy and collected pages and pages of notes and lessons. And then last spring, I had a little health scare, and it made me wonder, what was that one thing I wish I had done in my life still? And it turned out that it was the book about my mama's lessons. So I started working on this book and telling my friends about it. I was surprised to see how excited they got about the topic and how women immediately started thinking about what they learned from their mothers. And I was struck how obvious but simple this topic is and how we really never take time to articulate this. So this is how I started this podcast. And I had to tell you that I am extremely excited about this podcast. I am literally floating on energy of all my beautiful guests and their mothers and you, dear listeners, who listen and download week after week, and all the feedback I get about this. It's a beautiful topic. Thank you so much, my listeners, for listening. And thank you to all my guests who share their beautiful mothers with me. But let's start. So first me, I was born and raised in Croatia, which was back then Yugoslavia. When the Balkan War reached Zagreb in 1991, I was 17. My mom and I escaped to Vienna, Austria. My father had already lived in Vienna, and we thought we're just leaving until things calmed down. We thought we were leaving for a few days. But the war raged on, and my parents and I decided together that it would be the best for me to just continue my education in Vienna. Now, there was a reason why my parents separated when I was 9 years old. They just did not get along, and my mom moved back to Croatia. She and I never recovered from the wound of this separation. My mom and I have been so close. We were best friends. We were sisters. We were soulmates. We were just endless support from each other. So Mama went back to Croatia. I finished my high school and my university in Vienna. I did my MBA. I worked for 4 years at United Nations, and then I started my corporate career, which was 12 years long. And then I burned out. I burned out and healed myself from this by accepting the painful truth that all of this that I have been building for so many years was unhealthy for me. I gathered the courage with the support of my mom to dedicate myself to what I just recently discovered was my true passion, which was writing. So I published 2 memoirs and I wrote 2 other books, which unfortunately still in the drawers and waiting for a little bit of more of my attention. I published over hundreds of essays in various newspapers and magazines in Austria and Croatia and Germany, writing mostly about feminism, immigration, and the capitalist system. I also started my PhD. And today I'm happily married and have an amazing son. And I'm working on my mom's book and hosting this beautiful podcast. But let's talk about my incredible mama. Mama Jagoda Kaloper was born in Zagreb in 1947 to a very handsome doctor of internal medicine who was also, as I hear still nowadays, a big mensch. He was apparently an amazing human being. And his beautiful red-haired wife, who was a nurse. Jagoda has one sister. And when she was only 12 and her sister was 6, her mother passed away from a rare form of placenta cancer. The whole family never recovered from this loss. Jagoda's father never recovered. He remarried twice and then died of a heart attack when he was only 52 and Jagoda was 26. Jagoda was always a beautiful and very intelligent child. And like her mama and like me, she was very serious about her ballet school. But Jagoda also liked performing in the school theater. And when she was 17, she was approached by a director who invited her to a casting of his new film. Jagoda got the role. The movie was a success. And she was immediately offered the role in her next movie. This movie became a huge success, and Jagoda became a huge success. She had a leading role there, and at 18, she already won her first Yugoslavian Oscar. Movies followed, and she became celebrated equally for her beauty and her talent. She had a real movie career. She was kept on being awarded and celebrated and traveled to film festivals around the world, from Cannes to New York. Her face was shown on magazine covers. And while doing all of this and working on film, Jagoda decided to go to university and become an artist. She got accepted to the Academy of Fine Arts, in Zagreb. And she graduated from there in time and had her first exhibition, which was very well received. And Jagoda started building a parallel career that was equally successful and started doing graphic design, designing books. And I believe that every single book she designed got awarded for the design. She did industrial design and designed toys and created jewelry. And her creativity and her output were just endless. Now, Jagoda was always very rebellious. She always wanted better for our society and for the human race. She took an active part in the 1968 movement, and she was always proudly saying how she stood at the barricades when they were fighting for a better, more humane and more just world. She was a very loud and very active feminist. She had a phase when she was very young where she was a loud communist. And then she had a phase when she criticized the communist system in Yugoslavia so loudly that a few times the secret police came to our door and took Mama away to hearings. Thankfully, it always had a good end. Now, Mama was also active for people around the world. In 1970s, she started a fund called Hungry Child. She donated all her awards and collected funds and bought medication and food and personally flew with every shipment to Africa, to the poorest parts of Africa, to make sure that the help reached those it was intended to, that the help really reached the hungry children. And mind you, this was 1970s. It was way before Angelina Jolie and George Clooney made this fashionable. When she was 24, she met my father, who just finished university. He was a young architect. And on their first date, they went ice skating. The next morning, my dad called my mom and said, I have my afternoon off. How about we go get married? And my mom, being the crazy rebellious hippie she was, thought, why not? I can always get divorced. And they got married that very afternoon. They knew each other, I think, for 24 hours or so. The first few months of their marriage, they were married in secret. Nobody knew they were married. But then it came out and they started living together. And 3 years later, I was born. And as I already mentioned, they loved each other very, very much, but they also fought a lot. And when I was 9, they separated. And soon after, my father moved to Vienna, Austria. My mother took care of me and supported me through the very hard phase of my life, where I went through the very complicated scoliosis surgery and a very hard recovery. And only 2 years later, the war broke out and we escaped to Vienna and learned again that there was a reason why my parents separated. They just did not go well together. And a few months later, my mom returned to Zagreb. Croatia was still at war. And she continued living alone and stayed alone her whole life and working on her art. In her 50s, Jagoda asked for a video camera and started filming. We had no idea, and I think she had no idea what she was really doing. But when she was 62, her first art movie was finished. It was called Woman in the Mirror. And in it, she mixed snippets from her movies with the snippets of the documentary movies she filmed with her video camera. It became a very, very interesting commentary on a woman's life, on aging, on a woman's position in society, but also an interesting commentary on life versus fiction. The movie put her back into spotlight. She started winning awards with it. She went back to international film festivals. The movie was bought by the Zagreb Museum of Contemporary Art for their permanent collection. And she got put on the list of 10 most influential artists in Croatia at the time. The movie was followed by a few fantastic exhibitions, and then suddenly she passed away. Now, when talking about my incredible mama, my friends often told me how lucky I was to have a mother who was my idol and from whom I could learn so much. And I know I'm endlessly lucky, because Jagoda's life was so rich and so full of lessons that you could not learn from that, I think. And it's going to be hard to push all of this into 30 minutes, but let me try. This is why I decided to make it into a book. So let's talk about lessons. I think the most important lesson I learned from Jagoda is to love life, to adore life, to be passionate about life, to bite into it like into a juicy apple. She always pushed me to live big, to be courageous, to take risks, to make changes, to do everything, to try everything, to be passionate about it. And she would say, what's the worst thing that could happen? And that's an important thing to remember. What's the worst thing that could happen? Or she would tell me, just do it. If nothing else, do it for the experience. You need to collect experiences in life, especially if you want to be a writer. And she would always say, you can change things. Try it. And if you don't like it, change it again. She never lived lukewarm. She was very, very full of passion about everything. She was passionate about her art, about social change, about justice. But she was then equally passionate about the blue sky, the ocean she and I loved diving into, the animals, nature. She loudly loved life. And we would walk around and she would say, look at this sky. Isn't the sky beautiful? And isn't this breeze gorgeous? Aren't we lucky to be alive? And she made me learn how to appreciate these simple things in life. A glass of red wine, And her home was decorated for enjoyment. It was cozy and warm and beautiful. And her home celebrated life. She loved people. She just loved being. And in one of her interviews, when she was yet again asked about her beauty, she said, beauty isn't about the way you look on this planet. Beauty is the way you exist in this planet. I'll never forget that. She also taught me to leave a mark, to build myself as a person, to educate and inform myself, to have an opinion about things that matter, to fight for justice, to see every situation from different angles, and to try to find the truth. She taught me, not by telling me, by the way she lived her life, to create. And she taught me, after she left, that even when you're not a creative person, and even if you're not an activist, you can leave a mark in the form of love and joy that you will be remembered by. I was just struck about things people told me and how much they mourn her leaving and how much they miss her in their lives. Another important lesson is to be independent. And we hear that a lot, but I don't necessarily mean financially and practically. Though she did convince me that every woman has to have her profession and own her home. She was very, very strict about this. But more in the sense to be my own person, to always have my work, to have my opinions, to have my hobbies, to have my friends, to have things I love, to be my own source of happiness and strength, to basically not depend on others to make me feel whole and content. And this is how she lived. This is what she modeled for me. Of course, she would have been happier in a wonderful relationship and with me at her side. But she was doing great by herself. And she would have never compromised herself. She would also never stand in my way just to have somebody next to her. She was okay by herself. And she also taught me that we can have it all. She showed me and she taught me that we can be mothers and wives and be successful in 2 professions if we want to. She kept telling me that these things come in phases and that we should accept and respect each phase and have patience for each phase. Because she would tell me everything always changes and evolves. And when I had Kai, she said, it's okay. It's okay to concentrate on healing and on your child and on giving him what he needs now. There will be plenty of time for you to go back to yourself and to your work and things you love and you want. And I know I say this from a place of privilege because I did not have to work when I gave birth. But I think the point here is that we women need to be gentle with ourselves. We need to know that we have time and we do not have to do everything at once. That we can do and be everything we want, but we should be forgiving with ourselves and trust and take one step at a time. That took a lot of pressure from me. And then there's presence. Mama Jagoda had a presence. She would light up every room she entered because she was present. People adored her. People adored everything she did and created. They adored her thoughts and things she fought for. They adored her in the everyday contact when they didn't know who she was, that she was this famous movie star. People loved her at the dog park, people at the local store, nurses in the hospital during her last days of her life who had no idea who my mama was. Whoever entered our house, from a cleaner to a repairman, anybody was offered food and drink and to sit down and have a chat. Everybody was her friend and she just connected with people. I truly became aware of the extent of this presence and ability to connect with others when she passed away. Because people mourned not the movie star, people mourned the way she made them feel when they were next to her. This is amazing. I'm not sure if I learned it, but I'm trying my best. This connection comes from being present in the moment. And without ever learning Eastern spiritualism, Jagoda knew how to connect. She connected with nature, with situations, with people, with animals. And watching her create was amazing. She never planned much. She took a canvas and a brush and just started. And you watched it, and it was like she plugged into the universe, and this art just came pouring down through her hand. And when I was pregnant and asked her for her parenting tips, because in my mind she was the best mother in the world, she never forbade me anything. We never fought, really. She made it look so smooth and easy. And so I asked her how to deal with tantrums, and she said, you never threw a tantrum because you never had to push your will through. We were always connected. We were always one. And we really were. And then when I told her about my meditation practice, she said, I don't need to meditate. I meditate every moment. And she did. Jagoda was just always directly connected to the universe every single moment of her existence. Also, very importantly, she taught me to age gracefully. She never did any plastic surgery. It was very hard for her. I watched it and witnessed it, how often she would stand in front of the mirror and pull her face, pull her lines straight, and discussing plastic surgery and other things with her friends. But she never did it. Other things were way more important to her. And through this, I learned to love and accept yourself. And it's hard. It's not easy. But I think it goes back to beauty being the existence on this planet and not the way you look on this planet. And connected to this, I think we go back to it never being late to reinvent yourself. Having recreated her success in her 60s and starting to create amazing things yet again in her 60s just gave me hope for growing older. It took away the stigma and it took away the fear that things stop when you grow older. My mama showed me they don't need to stop. They just do not need to stop. There are so many amazing things I want to share with you. One of the funny things she taught me was Jagoda, celebrated for her beauty as she was, she never trusted professional makeup artists or hairdressers. For every film, every opening night, every award ceremony, Jagoda was doing her own makeup, her own hair. She never went to a hairdresser. She never had beauty treatments. She did everything herself. She never had her nails done. And she did it with pride. She often talked about it in her interviews. And I learned that from her. And I'm learning there is something very empowering in us women not needing other women or other people or money to feel beautiful and to always look presentable in our best. Of course, there were things Jagoda did not teach me. She was terribly, 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 terrible with money. Money came in and immediately went out. She did not teach me how to save and invest money. She did not teach me how to cook and sew. She was able to do the most amazing dresses. She would do her own dresses very often for her premieres and her movies. She made dresses for me when I was little. She never taught me this. She said, you have better things to do and concentrate to, you can always pay other people to do this. But more importantly, she did not teach me how to control my emotions and my reactions. Jagoda was black and white, and she was very passionate and very emotional, and she was just as explosive as I am, or to put it the other way around, I am just as explosive as she was. Also, and this sounds weird, but she did not teach me how to manipulate situations or people. And I don't mean it in a bad way, like manipulate people into something they don't want to do, but just make certain things and situations easier for yourself and others. She did not know how to do this. She was just awfully straightforward and blunt, just the way I am. So yes, these were my mama's lessons, the most important lessons. All the others will be in the book. There are so many more. But to try to recap them, the most important lesson I learned from her was to love life, to be passionate about life, to comprehend or try to comprehend the magic of existence in this short time we have on this beautiful, beautiful planet. She also taught me to leave a mark either as a creative person or as an activist, or if nothing else, to leave a mark with the love and passion and the way you touched other people and their lives and the way you will be remembered by. Another one is to be independent. And by that, I don't mean only financially independent, but also independent in the sense that you should be your own source of happiness. You should not depend on other people to feel strong and happy and centered and content in your life. She also taught me that we women can have it all, but her message here was not to ruin ourselves by trying to have it all at the same time. She always said there's time for everything and life comes in steps, and it's okay to have a phase where you're a stay-at-home mother. It's okay to have a phase where you just concentrate on your work, just to do everything one step at a time. She taught me to be present and to connect. To her, it came naturally. I have to meditate and I have to learn this and I have to remind myself. But Mama was present in every moment and everything she did. And this reflected in her art and her career and her acting. I forgot to mention, Jagoda never learned her scripts. She would read her page just before the camera started rolling. And she said that learning her pages would make her less natural. This is also how she was present. And the way she was present and connected in every moment, of course, reflected in her relationships with other people and the way other people experienced her and connected to her and just loved her. She taught me to age gracefully. Here the message is, the beauty is not the way you look, but the way you exist. And to accept the changes we go through, also with our looks and our physical appearance. I think this is it. These were the most important lessons I learned from Mama Jagoda. There will be many, many more in the book. But for now, I want to say happy birthday, Mama Jagoda. I miss you terribly and I love you endlessly. And to my listeners, thank you for listening. Come back next week. If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Ana Tajder, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.